Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you stop begging for someone's attention, something unsettling happens. They begin to hear the silence they once ignored. Thoughtful. The person who treated your presence as ordinary suddenly feels disturbed by your absence. The one who believed you would always call, always explain, always forgive, and always return, begins to wonder where your energy has gone. Curious. They may watch you from a distance. They may search for signs that you still care. They may revisit old conversations, study your behavior, or create reasons to enter your life again. And what appears to be sudden obsession is often the psychological shock of discovering that they no longer possess the power they once had over you. But we must begin with an uncomfortable truth. People do not always become obsessed because they finally recognize your value. Sometimes they become obsessed because they can no longer access your attention. Sometimes they do not miss your heart. They miss the control they had over it. Sometimes they are not grieving the loss of love. They are grieving the loss of certainty, the certainty that no matter how carelessly they behaved, you would remain emotionally available. This is where the teachings associated with Carl Jung become deeply relevant. Jung understood that human beings are not driven only by conscious intentions. Beneath the surface lives the unconscious, a hidden world of fears, wounds, desires, projections, complexes, and rejected qualities. We may tell ourselves that we are acting rationally, yet much of what we do is influenced by forces we have never honestly examined. When you desperately need another person, you are rarely responding only to who that person truly is. You may also be responding to what they represent. They may represent safety, validation, acceptance, status, rescue, or the love you were denied earlier in life. You do not merely desire them. You unconsciously assign them the responsibility of completing you. You begin to believe that their attention proves your worth. Their messages determine your mood. Their affection makes you feel visible. Their distance makes you question your value. Your emotional center moves outside of you and becomes attached to their behavior. Without realizing it, you hand them the authority to define whether you are lovable, desirable, important, or enough. This is not love in its healthiest form. It is dependency wearing the clothing of devotion. Love says, I value you, but I do not abandon myself to keep you. Dependency says, without your approval, I do not know who I am. The tragedy is that the more you need someone to validate you, the less freely they can encounter you as an equal. Your neediness creates an imbalance. One person becomes the pursuer, the other becomes the prize. One asks for reassurance, the other decides when reassurance will be given. One fears losing the relationship, while the other grows comfortable knowing that the relationship will be preserved regardless of their behavior. Over time, your constant availability may become invisible to them. Human beings often fail to appreciate what they believe cannot be lost. Your sacrifices become expected. Your forgiveness becomes predictable. Your patience becomes permission. Your loyalty, instead of inspiring gratitude, may unintentionally teach them that there are no consequences for neglecting you. You may think, if I love them more, they will finally understand. So you explain yourself again. You send another message. You give another chance. You lower another boundary. You accept another excuse. You hope that your consistency will awaken their conscience. But every time you betray yourself to preserve the connection, you send two messages. To them you communicate, you may continue. To your own unconscious you communicate, my needs matter less than their presence. This inner betrayal has consequences. The parts of you that are repeatedly silenced do not disappear. They descend into what Jung called the shadow, the hidden region of the personality containing everything the conscious ego refuses to recognize or express. Your anger goes into the shadow. Your dignity goes into the shadow. Your desire to say no goes into the shadow. Your resentment, ambition, independence, and truth are pushed away because you fear that expressing them might cause rejection. You create a socially acceptable version of yourself, a persona designed to keep the relationship stable. You become agreeable when you are hurt. You pretend not to care when you are disappointed. You smile while internally collapsing. You tell people that everything is fine because admitting the truth would force you to make a decision. Yet the psyche seeks balance. What is repressed will eventually return. It may return as anxiety. It may appear as obsessive thinking. It may emerge as jealousy, exhaustion, emotional numbness, sudden rage, or the unbearable feeling that you have lost yourself. At first, you believe the pain comes entirely from the other person, but gradually, a deeper realization emerges. The greatest suffering is not simply that they neglected you. It is that you neglected yourself in order to remain connected to them. That realization marks the beginning of transformation. One day, something changes. Perhaps there is one final disappointment. Perhaps you become exhausted from explaining what should have been obvious. Perhaps you recognize the pattern. Perhaps you look in the mirror and no longer recognize the person staring back. And then you stop. You stop chasing. You stop arguing for your worth. You stop demanding explanations from someone who benefits from keeping you confused. You stop trying to convince them to love you correctly. You stop presenting evidence of your loyalty as though you are standing in a courtroom. You become quiet, not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally understand that your words cannot awaken someone committed to misunderstanding you. This silence is different from the silence you used before. Previously, you may have withdrawn to provoke a reaction. You hoped they would notice, panic, and return. Your silence was still centered on them. It was a strategy designed to regain attention. True detachment is not a strategy. It is not pretending to be unavailable while secretly checking whether they have noticed. It is not posting photographs to trigger jealousy. It is not delaying replies as part of a psychological game. Such behavior is still dependency because your actions remain controlled by the response you hope to produce. Genuine detachment begins when you no longer organize your life around their reaction. You do not become silent to punish them. You become silent because you are tired of punishing yourself. You do not set boundaries to make them chase you. You set boundaries because access to you must be earned through respect. You do not improve your life so that they will regret losing you. You improve your life because you regret losing yourself. This is the beginning of individuation, the psychological process through which a person becomes more fully who they are. Individuation does not mean becoming selfish, isolated, or emotionally cold. It means integrating the neglected parts of your personality so that you are no longer divided against yourself. You reclaim your anger and transform it into boundaries. You reclaim your loneliness and transform it into solitude. You reclaim your grief and transform it into wisdom. You reclaim your rejected ambition and transform it into direction. You reclaim the love you kept pouring into unavailable people and return it to your own life. As this happens, your energy changes. You no longer enter a room asking, "Who approves of me?" You begin asking, "What is true for me?" You stop studying everyone else's behavior while ignoring your own discomfort. You stop making yourself smaller to protect another person from the consequences of their choices. And this is often when they begin to feel your absence. Why? Because the psychological arrangement has been disturbed. They were accustomed to your attention. They expected your emotional labor. They relied on your willingness to repair what they repeatedly damaged. Perhaps your admiration strengthened their ego. Perhaps your need for them made them feel powerful. Perhaps they could avoid confronting their own emptiness because your constant pursuit reassured them that they were desirable. When that attention disappears, they are left alone with themselves. The phone becomes quiet. The reassurance stops. The familiar cycle breaks. They can no longer test your loyalty whenever they feel insecure. They can no longer create distance and watch you work harder to restore closeness. They can no longer use your fear of abandonment as a guarantee that you will tolerate the unacceptable. Your absence becomes a mirror. And many people are not obsessed with the person they lost. They are obsessed with the reflection that disappeared when that person walked away. While you were chasing them, they did not need to examine their behavior. Your pursuit confirmed their importance. Your explanations protected them from accountability. Your forgiveness allowed them to avoid change. But when you stop needing them, the image they held of themselves begins to crack. They may have imagined that they were unforgettable, irresistible, or permanently necessary to you. Your emotional independence contradicts that fantasy. They begin to ask, how could this person move on? But beneath that question is another. Who am I if I no longer have power over them? This is where projection enters. According to Jungian thought, projection occurs when unconscious qualities, emotions, or possibilities within ourselves are experienced as though they belong entirely to another person. We may become intensely fascinated by someone because they carry qualities we have not yet developed in ourselves. We see confidence in them because we have denied our own confidence. We see freedom in them because we feel imprisoned. We see mystery in them because we have not explored our own inner depths. In relationships, people may project idealized images onto one another. You may not be loved as the complex human being you truly are. You may be loved as a symbol, a fantasy, a rescuer, a caretaker, or a source of validation. As long as you perform the expected role, the relationship remains psychologically comfortable. But when you change, the projection is disturbed. You are no longer playing the person they imagined you to be. You become less predictable. You say no where you once said yes. You leave conversations that become disrespectful. You stop over-explaining. You no longer rush to soothe them after they hurt you. You begin building a life that does not revolve around their moods. To someone who benefited from your lack of boundaries, your self-respect may feel like rejection. Your peace may appear arrogant. Your independence may seem cruel. They may accuse you of changing, and they will be correct. You have changed. You have stopped cooperating with the version of the relationship that required your self-abandonment. This can activate their shadow. Feelings they previously avoided may rise to the surface: insecurity, jealousy, fear of abandonment, shame, competitiveness, or rage. Instead of acknowledging these emotions, they may project them onto you. They may call you selfish because you finally have limits. They may say you never cared because you no longer accept mistreatment. They may accuse you of playing games because they cannot understand that you have truly released the need to win them back. They may suddenly idealize you, remembering only your best qualities now that they can no longer access them. They may become fascinated by your transformation because your freedom confronts them with their own emotional imprisonment. But be careful. Their renewed interest does not automatically mean they have changed. Attention is not accountability. Jealousy is not devotion. Possessiveness is not love. Repeated messages are not emotional maturity. A person can become obsessed with regaining access to you without developing the capacity to treat you well. This is why you must not confuse their pursuit with your healing. Their return may flatter the ego, especially after a period of rejection. A part of you may want to say, now they finally understand my value. But psychological growth requires a more difficult question. Do they value me, or are they reacting to the loss of control? Observe actions, not intensity. Intensity can be produced by fear. Intensity can be produced by wounded pride. Intensity can be produced by competition, loneliness, or the realization that you are becoming unavailable. Healthy love is not measured by how desperately someone pursues you when you leave. It is measured by how consistently they respect you when they have you. There is also another possibility. Sometimes people are not obsessed with controlling you. Sometimes your absence genuinely awakens them. Human beings can be unconscious. They may fail to recognize their behavior until consequences make avoidance impossible. Losing you may force them to confront patterns they had denied, but even then, words are not enough. Insight must be followed by transformation. Regret must become responsibility. Apologies must be supported by changed behavior. A person who is truly awakened will not merely demand another opportunity. They will understand why you no longer trust easily. They will respect your boundaries, accept the consequences of their actions, and work patiently to become safer. They will not pressure you to heal according to their preferred timetable. They will not use guilt to regain access. They will not present their pain as proof that you owe them reconciliation. Real change is humble. Obsession is often entitled. The purpose of your detachment, therefore, is not to make anyone obsessed. It is to become whole enough that another person's obsession no longer controls you. Many people misunderstand emotional independence. They think it means becoming heartless. They imagine that strength requires the destruction of tenderness. But the strongest person is not the one who feels nothing. It is the one who can feel deeply without surrendering judgment. You can miss someone and still refuse to return to chaos. You can love someone and recognize that they are not capable of loving you safely. You can remember the beautiful moments without using them to excuse the destructive ones. You can forgive someone internally without reopening the door externally. You can wish them healing while choosing distance. This is maturity, the ability to hold contradictory truths without collapsing into denial. You may say, they had good qualities, but the relationship harmed me. They may have loved me in the only way they knew, but that way was not enough. I understand their wounds, but I'm not required to become wounded by them. I do not need to hate them in order to leave them. Jung's psychological vision was not about becoming morally perfect. It was about becoming conscious. Consciousness asks you to see both the light and darkness within yourself. You must examine why you remained so long. Was it only because they manipulated you, or did a part of you also fear being alone? Did you repeatedly choose unavailable people because the pattern felt familiar? Did you confuse unpredictability with passion? Did you believe love had to be earned through suffering? Did you become addicted to the emotional highs and lows because calm affection felt unfamiliar? These questions are not accusations. They are invitations to freedom. You cannot change a pattern you refuse to recognize. If you see yourself only as a victim of another person's behavior, you may leave one unhealthy relationship and unconsciously recreate the same emotional structure with someone new. The faces change. The pattern remains. One person avoids, you pursue. One person withholds, you overgive. One person creates uncertainty. You become consumed with proving your value. The unconscious seeks what is familiar, even when what is familiar is painful. We often call something chemistry when it is actually recognition. The nervous system recognizes an old wound and says, I have been here before. Perhaps this time I can finally win. You try to receive from the present person what you were denied in the past. You hope that if this distant individual chooses you, an ancient rejection will be repaired. But the wound cannot be healed by repeating the conditions that created it. It must be healed by becoming conscious of it. You must learn that love does not require constant anxiety. You must learn that uncertainty is not depth. You must learn that another person's emotional unavailability is not a challenge to your worth. You must stop asking, how can I make them choose me? And begin asking, why am I choosing someone who repeatedly makes me question myself? When you finally stop needing them, the deepest transformation is not happening in their mind, it is happening in yours. You begin reclaiming your projections. The qualities you once worshipped in them are recognized as undeveloped possibilities within yourself. If you admired their confidence, you begin developing your own. If you admired their freedom, you begin making courageous choices. If you believed they gave your life meaning, you begin building meaning through purpose, creativity, friendship, service, faith, or self-knowledge. If their presence made you feel alive, you ask why your own life had become so emotionally empty that one person's attention could control your entire inner world. This reclamation weakens obsession on both sides. You no longer need them to carry the parts of you that you refuse to claim. You see them more realistically, not as a savior, not as a monster, but as a human being with gifts, wounds, limitations, and choices. You also see yourself more clearly. You are not simply the abandoned one. You are the person who survived abandonment and chose not to abandon yourself again. This is when your solitude becomes powerful. At first, solitude may feel like emptiness because you are accustomed to constant emotional stimulation. Without the cycle of waiting, analyzing, hoping, and fearing, the day can feel strangely quiet. You may mistake peace for boredom, but remain there. Do not rush to fill the silence with another attachment. The silence is where your unconscious begins to speak. Old grief may rise, memories may return, you may feel anger you postponed for years. You may mourn not only the person, but also the future you imagined with them. You may mourn the version of yourself who believed that enough love could transform someone who refused to transform themselves. Let the grief come. Grief is not evidence that you made the wrong decision. It is evidence that something mattered. You are not weak because you missed them. You are human. Healing does not erase attachment instantly. It teaches you not to obey every emotion that appears. A feeling is real, but it is not always an instruction. Loneliness may say, return. Fear may say, you will never find anyone else. Memory may say, perhaps it was not so bad. But consciousness asks you to remember the complete truth. Do not remember only the moments that comfort your longing. Remember the confusion. Remember how often you doubted yourself. Remember the conversations that went in circles. Remember the promises that were repeated without being fulfilled. Remember the cost of remaining. The psyche can romanticize what is familiar when the future feels uncertain. Therefore, write down what you learned. Record the boundaries you ignored. Identify the warning signs you rationalized. Clarify the qualities you now require in a relationship. This is not bitterness. It is wisdom developed through experience. As you heal, something remarkable happens. You stop needing universal approval. You become willing to disappoint people who expect you to betray yourself. You understand that being misunderstood is sometimes the price of living truthfully. You stop explaining your boundaries to those committed to violating them. You stop arguing with people who benefit from your confusion. You stop seeking closure from someone whose behavior was the closure. You recognize that closure is not always a final conversation. Sometimes closure is the moment you accept that the conversation you wanted will never happen, and acceptance gives you back your energy. The person who once occupied your thoughts from morning until night slowly becomes smaller inside your mind. Their actions no longer define the atmosphere of your day. You may still remember them, but the memory no longer commands you. This is what emotional independence looks like. It is not the absence of love. It is the absence of self-betrayal. You become capable of connection without possession. You can appreciate someone without making them responsible for your identity. You can desire companionship without treating solitude as a punishment. You can receive love without using it as evidence that you are worthy, because your worth is no longer waiting for external confirmation. Ironically, this is often when you become most magnetic. Not because you are performing indifference, but because psychological wholeness has a presence. A person who does not beg to be chosen moves differently. Their energy is not scattered across the opinions of others. They are more grounded, more discerning, and more difficult to manipulate. Others sense that access to this person is no longer automatic. But remember, becoming magnetic is not the goal. The goal is becoming free. Do not heal merely to attract better people. Heal so that even when no one is watching, you remain loyal to yourself. Do not build confidence only so that someone regrets losing you. Build confidence so that regret, yours or theirs, no longer determines your direction. Do not become successful as revenge. Revenge keeps the other person at the center of your life. Build because creation is more meaningful than resentment. The greatest victory is not that they become obsessed with you. The greatest victory is that you are no longer obsessed with proving anything to them. They may watch you grow. They may return. They may regret their choices. They may compare everyone new to the version of you they failed to appreciate, or they may not. Your healing cannot depend on which outcome occurs. Perhaps they will never apologize. Perhaps they will tell a version of the story in which you are the villain. Perhaps they will move on quickly. Perhaps they will appear completely unaffected. Do not allow appearances to pull you back into the cycle. Your work is not to control their narrative. Your work is to remain faithful to reality. You know what you experienced. You know what it cost you. You know why you had to leave. When you are internally certain, you no longer require the other person to agree with your decision. This is psychological adulthood. The capacity to act according to truth, even when approval is withheld. Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment when you must choose between being needed and being respected. Some people will need your weakness because your weakness gives them access. They will need your insecurity because it makes you easier to control. They will need your fear of abandonment because it guarantees that you will stay. When you become whole, those relationships may collapse. Do not mistake collapse for failure. Some relationships survive only because one person refuses to grow. Your transformation does not destroy what was healthy. It exposes what was conditional. The people who truly love you may need time to adjust to your boundaries, but they will not demand your self-erasure. They will not require you to remain wounded so that they can feel secure. They will celebrate your growth, even when it changes the relationship. Those who loved only your availability may accuse you of becoming distant. Those who loved your obedience may call you difficult. Those who loved your silence may say you have become confrontational. Those who benefited from your guilt may call your freedom selfish. Let them misunderstand. Every step toward individuation separates you from identities that were built for survival rather than truth. You are not becoming someone else. You are removing what you had to become in order to be accepted. The final lesson is this: do not wait for another person to become obsessed with you before recognizing your value. Your value existed when they ignored you. Your value existed when they rejected you. Your value existed when they chose someone else. Your value existed when you were crying alone, wondering why your love was not enough. Their inability to recognize your worth never reduced it. It only revealed the limitations of their perception, and your former need for their approval did not make you foolish. It made you unconscious of your own inner authority. Now that you are becoming conscious, do not shame the person you once were. That version of you was trying to survive with the understanding available at the time. Thank them, forgive them, then release them. You no longer need to chase love because you have stopped running from yourself. You no longer need to convince people to stay because you have learned that anyone who requires your self-destruction is not truly choosing you. You no longer need to fear solitude because you have discovered that being alone is less painful than being emotionally abandoned in someone else's presence. And perhaps they will become obsessed when you finally stop needing them. Perhaps your silence will disturb them. Perhaps your transformation will awaken longing, regret, fear, or admiration. But by then, the question will no longer be, do they want me? The question will be, are they capable of meeting the person I have become? And sometimes the answer will be no. Not because you are cruel, not because you are bitter, not because you have stopped loving, but because you have finally learned that love without respect becomes bondage, attachment without consciousness becomes suffering, and connection without selfhood becomes disappearance. You did not come into this world to disappear inside another person's expectations. You came to become conscious. You came to confront your shadow. You came to reclaim your projections. You came to integrate the abandoned parts of your being. You came to become whole. So let them wonder why you changed. Let them feel the space where your constant attention once existed. Let them confront what your presence protected them from seeing. Let them become obsessed, regretful, curious, or confused if that is the path their unconscious chooses.
But do not return merely because they finally notice the absence they once created. Continue forward. Protect the peace you fought to build. Honor the boundaries that returned you to yourself. Choose relationships in which love does not require begging, guessing, shrinking, or suffering. And remember, the day you stop needing someone is not necessarily the day you stop loving them. It is the day you stop needing their love in order to love yourself. That is not the end of your heart. That is the beginning of your freedom.